Hello, welcome to the Inside Look. My name is Neil Arwin Mercado, reporter for INQUIRER.net. And joining us here today is Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Romualdez. Sir, hello from Manila. How are you?
Hello. Yes, I'm fine. Thank you. Very good to see you, Neil.
How is the COVID situation over there in the US, sir?
No, the situation here in the United States obviously is pretty much, at least in many parts of the United States, the vaccine program of the Biden administration has been quite successful. I'm sure you've heard about the vaccine rollout, which is now reaching about 3 to 4 million a day. Being a fully developed country with three successful vaccines available to the Americans, we're very impressed, of course, on how the United States has been able to fight this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. So, what is the situation like for the Filipino American community, sir? Community over there, sir. So, I understand the numbers that we have from the DFA show that there are Filipinos who were affected by by COVID-19. They contracted the disease, sir. So, what assistance is the embassy giving, or how do we how does your office stay updated on the situation of Filipinos there during this pandemic?
We get regular reports from our consulates all over the country, and of course, our public diplomacy, headed by Daryl Antares, is the one who's collating all this information. While the numbers are steadily going down because of the fact that, as I said earlier, the vaccine rollout here in the United States is massive, and
Mm-hmm.
they've been able to more or less vaccinate as many as 3 to 4 million people a day, which
Mm-hmm.
is a very phenomenal number considering what's happening all over the world. So, but I think most Filipinos are what we call machunurin. They
Mm-hmm.
will follow whatever the suggestion is meant. There are not too many who are resisting to get vaccinated, and we encourage them whenever we can to do so, because this is the only way to be able to manage and control this pandemic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. But sir, the ito bang opisina ninyo is the Philippine Embassy extending specific help or assistance dito sa mga COVID-19 positive patients natin? What kind of help can your office extend to them?
Well, and there's not much we can do really, except to
Mm-hmm.
really coordinate with the CDC and the Department of Health here. As you know, everything here is obviously dependent on the U.S. government on how they're able to manage and control this pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
We can coordinate with them if they need our help in coordinating assistance. We do so whenever we can. But our overseas workers who are living here in the United States, so we've been able to help in repatriating them back to the Philippines. But if they can stay here for the meantime, because of the infection rate that's going on in the Philippines, we encourage them to do so,
Mm-hmm.
and until things get sort of like controlled in the country.
Mm-hmm. I understand, sir, that you also play a role in the Philippine government's deals with American pharma companies when it comes to our procurement of our own vaccines to be sent here in the Philippines, sir. So any relevant developments on those deals, sir?
Well, I think you've had the reports that we have been working with Secretary Galvez on
Mm-hmm.
trying to uh, uh, procure these vaccines that we badly need. And we worked with the private sector headed by Mr. Ricky Rason, so that we can save. In other words, the government has will have funds available for other vaccines
Mm-hmm.
in other countries, like what we're trying to get from India. We've been able to so far close an agreement for 20 million doses, and we're working for another 5 million from
Mm-hmm.
Moderna vaccines. This is the only major purchase that we've made here from the pharmaceutical companies. We're also working with COVAX facility
Mm-hmm.
for the Pfizer, and it's being held back because of some legal impediments, but we're hopeful that this will be resolved within this week. That's only about 2.4 to 2.5 billion doses of the Pfizer vaccines. But As you know, the United States, President Biden's administration has control over these vaccines right now. They would like to be able to have a domestic supply that's more than enough to cover that every American who would want to get the
Mm-hmm.
vaccine, it will be available to them by May 1. Working with the Moderna vaccine or the Moderna pharmaceutical company, they told us that perhaps by about middle or end of May, there could be more than enough here in the United States so that we can get an approval from the U.S. government to help us
Mm-hmm.
in being able to get an earlier delivery, because the delivery date given to us by Moderna was around middle of June. So we're pushing
Mm-hmm.
hard to get these things to get our vaccines earlier. And I'm very pleased to let you know, Neil, that our Filipino American associations and Filipino Americans here in the United States, regardless of political color or political beliefs, now are banding together in trying to write to their congressmen and their senators in their local communities to
Mm-hmm.
be able to push the U.S. government to give us this help and this assistance in getting these vaccines earlier because of the critical situation that we have in the Philippines. So we're very pleased about that, and we're working with them, and hopefully we will get some good results in the next couple of days or maybe a week from now.
Mm-hmm. Sir, during our conversation before this interview, you mentioned nga na there are Filipino American groups, associations, and individuals even who are directly contacting their state congressmen. Tama ba intindi ko, sir?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
we have, for instance, Jerry Perez Tagle in Las Vegas, who reached out to us and asked us what can we do to help, and then I related to him on how this problem that we have in getting these vaccines for an early delivery. If not for the situation in the Philippines, we could possibly wait until June 15. But
Mm-hmm.
now that the situation is really very critical, and I know that there are so many people who are getting infected in the Philippines now, we're really very much concerned about it. And I've talked to the White House
Mm-hmm.
advisor, I've talked to the State Department, and even the Pentagon. As you know, we have strong military ties here, and
Mm-hmm.
I keep telling them that this is perhaps the best time for us to show what kind of relationship we have with the United States. This is the time when we need you the most.
Mm-hmm.
We need those vaccines today, not tomorrow.
Mhm, mhm. Sir, you mentioned nga kanina na Filipino-American groups are sending letters to their congressmen. In what way can the congressmen and the lawmakers over there in the US, in a way, hasten the delivery of
Well,
the vaccines? Can they pass a law or what?
no, no. I think it's mostly it's a persuasion or persuading the Biden administration that
Mhm,
obviously is now in charge of the government here.
mhm,
We're talking about Democratic senators and congressmen, and as I said, regardless of political color,
mhm,
there are quite a number of U.S. senators and congressmen who are quite influential here in Washington, D.C., and certainly they can help us. Since they have a large Filipino American community in their areas, they would
mhm,
listen to them. And, um, and let's face it, Filipino Americans here in this country are very much respected. Majority of our people are very hardworking. They are very much appreciated by their communities. We have a lot of frontliners. We have a lot of
mhm,
doctors, Filipino American doctors who are practicing here in the United States. All this adds up to the kind of influence that we have with the U.S. government if we just band together. And this is one time that I really am encouraging them. We disagree with a lot of things in politics, but I don't think anyone will disagree that we really have to help our country, especially
mhm,
at this time where all of us, every single one of us, have relatives or friends who live in the country.
mhm, mhm, sir. No, sir, I would like to go back to the vaccine issue quickly lang, sir. No? So just for the information of our viewers, so we have Moderna, we have Pfizer, and we have Johnson and Johnson. These are the three main pharma companies over there in the United States that are producing COVID-19 vaccine. So we have 20 million. This is already secured, right, sir? The 20
Yes,
million with Moderna, and we're trying to purchase 5 million more. Based on your
yes.
conversation with Moderna, sir, when will this be delivered?
Well, as I said, the June 15 is the first deliveries will be coming in June, which is
Mhm.
the second half of this year. And then on to July, August, September, all up to the end of the year, we'll get all those 20 million.
Mhm.
Hopefully, the next 5 million that we're trying to close will also bump
Mhm.
it up even much more. Um, the good news is that Moderna has been given an approval by the US FDA to be
Mhm.
able to add more in that vial.
Mhm.
That
Mhm.
In other words, instead of the usual 10, they're going to bump it up to 15 now,
Mhm.
which means to say they'll be able to produce more of
More.
the
Mhm.
vaccine. This is it's like white gold. Uh, the sooner we get these vaccines available in our country, the better for all of us. And so that's good news for us. And we're consistently working with them. And I must say that Moderna has been extremely helpful to us. They've given us direction on how we can try to get these vaccines earlier. They've also helped us in every way we can. And they really have in Tagalog, may malasakit sa atin. And that's why
Mhm.
I even invited them uh, to open a distribution point in Clark in the future. Because as you know, this pandemic is not going to go away
Mhm.
overnight or
Mhm.
quickly. They'll probably will be needing a lot of booster shots like the flu. And Moderna is quite ahead also in that one. The good news about them is that they've already developed a booster shot for future variants that are now moving around not only in the Philippines but also all over the world.
Mhm. Mhm. Sir, now I would like to go to another topic. This time, I would like to talk about the attacks on the Asian American community over there. So, sir, this is something that's being talked about not only there in the United States. A lot of Filipinos are actually very concerned about this issue, sir. So, my first question, sir, is have we reached a point that we can say that this is now an alarming case?
Yes, it is very alarming. It's been happening quite often now, and I think that many of us saw the video on
Mm-hmm.
a Filipino American who was going on her way to church, who was just attacked by this big American who kicked her in the gut, and I think that everyone was just disgusted to see that.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so distressful. One can get very emotional about it. I myself, when I saw that, I really wanted to, well, sometimes turn violent myself. you know,
Mm-hmm.
we lose our temper when we see something like that, especially somebody as helpless as ours, the 65-year-old Phil American who
Mm-hmm.
was on our way to church. It has been happening quite often, and not only to Filipino Americans, but to Vietnamese Americans,
Mm-hmm.
to Cambodian Americans, to all Asian Americans. And we're all the ASEAN ambassadors here in Washington, D.C. We've all banded together.
Mm-hmm.
And during our meeting with the White House advisors, that is the first thing that we expressed our concern, our grave concern for the attacks on Asian Americans here in the United States.
Mm-hmm. To those Filipinos who were able to watch that video, they might ask the question: what can the Philippine embassy do? Is raising concern to the White House the best that the Philippine embassy can do, or can the Philippine embassy do something more concrete, or it's out of your hands?
Well, no, I think that raising it to the White House has been very effective. As you know, the White House, President Biden himself has reacted to it and he set up a fund to be able to help those that are being attacked. At the same time, I think the law enforcement, the FBI
Mm-hmm.
and several other law enforcement agencies that are the main headquarters here in Washington, D.C., have been given instructions to do everything they can.
Mm-hmm.
This anti or these hate crimes have been happening here in the United States for so many years, not only now, but more so, of course, now with Asian Americans. So they've reacted, and we're very grateful for the for the Biden administration's move into trying to avert this kind of situation where we feel unsafe. Our
Mm-hmm.
Filipino Americans are very unsafe, especially in the subways in New York, for instance. So
Mm-hmm.
they put out even undercover agents now, and so many things that they're doing to be able to avert this kind of situation. And I am hopeful and optimistic that all of these measures that are being taken by the government here in the United States will be able to help and keep our Filipino Americans safe.
Mhm, mhm. So, Foreign Affairs Secretary nagkaroon siya ng statement recently, Ambassador, saying that the recent attacks on the Asian American community in the United States, it might influence the Philippine foreign policy, sir. What was the directive from the Foreign Affairs Secretary regarding this issue?
Well, we all know Secretary Locsin. He's a man who's very articulate, and he, like me, we can lose our temper, and I've spoken to him. I just spoke to him the other day, and he told me that he was really, really concerned, and
Mm-hmm.
of course, any Filipino can lose your temper and get very angry and very emotional about this, especially with something like that. That just just this helpless woman who's just walking in the street of New York and gets attacked like that. Who wouldn't feel really emotional
Mm-hmm.
about it? I did, and many others. So the secretary was just expressing his disgust and his anger
Mm-hmm.
to what happened. But I think in the long run, our foreign policy with the United States remains still strong. That we continue to have good
Mm-hmm.
relations in the country, and we will continue to work to make sure that it remains that way.
Mm-hmm. I understand that it is the comments of the Foreign Affairs Secretary, but from your perspective, sir, when he is talking about this event influencing the foreign policy, what do you make of that?
And if let's say, for instance, which I doubt if it will ever happen,
Mm-hmm.
if let's say the U.S. government does not do anything about it, then obviously we will have to react to it in the foreign policy level. We have to do something to protect our citizens or Filipino
Mm-hmm.
Americans here in the United States, just like any country would. If Americans, for instance, in the Philippines were unsafe and our government doesn't do anything about it, then the U.S. government will change its course as far as their foreign policy towards the Philippines. So it's a natural. This is something that will happen if nothing is being done. But
Mm-hmm.
I can uh, I can assure the secretary, and of course,
Mm-hmm.
assure our countrymen that the United States is doing something about it.
Mm-hmm.
It is important for them, and I think that this country, we all know, has welcomed many immigrants and
Mm-hmm.
many races here in the United States. It's something that they have to live with, but at the same time, I know they're trying to address it in the best way they can.
Mm-hmm. So, in short, sir, yes, the United States government is doing something about this, but in the
Yes.
event that this would not be addressed, the Philippine government is ready to do something when it comes to when in
Well,
terms of its foreign policy.
it's a hypothetical question, Neil, and I think it's almost impossible that a country
Mm-hmm.
like the United States will not do something about it because, as I said, this is a multiracial. I mean, this is a country that has many races. It's a
Mm-hmm.
country made up of immigrants, so it could be an anti-racial slur on simple on Irish Americans, on Italian Americans, or any kind of race. So it happens, and it has happened on past occasions, and I think they've been able to address it as best as they can. That's why
Mm-hmm.
they have a law on anti-hate crimes, a very, very stringent law, as a matter of fact.
Mm-hmm. My final question on this, sir, is it's one thing that the U.S. government is doing something about this. You said they're doing something about it. From your perspective, is this enough? Is what they're doing so far enough?
I think they're doing the best they can under the
Mm-hmm.
circumstances. They cannot do more than what they've already done, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that the fact that they're focusing and giving attention to this is already an indication that this is a very serious crime that they are doing. And as you could see, with what happened the other day with this Filipino American attacked in the streets of New York, they immediately caught the person. So they acted very quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and they found out who he is, and there was something wrong with him. I mean, psychologically. So all of this indicates that this government, the U.S. government, is doing everything they can to
Mhm.
protect its citizens.
Mhm. Sir, on my last topic, let's talk about the West Philippine Sea. This is another pressing issue here in the Philippines. As you might know, sir, merong recent events over there in the West Philippine Sea involving China, sir. The secretary, again, Foreign Affairs Secretary Locsin is quoted as saying that U.S. remains to be the Philippines' only military ally following, and there have also been conversations between the defense secretaries of the two countries. Even itong si US Secretary of State Anthony Blinken recently tweeted in support of the Philippines regarding this issue. What is the commitment of the United States so far with regard to the West Philippine Sea issue?
Well, as you may recall, then Secretary Pompeo, when he went to the Philippines and met with President Duterte, very clearly said, "We have your back." And I think recently Secretary Blinken has said something similar, that we
Mm-hmm.
have your back. So with that, I think we can feel comfort in the fact that if anything happens in the West Philippine Sea at this time, they recognize our arbitral award that we won in the
Mm-hmm.
UNCLOS, and so we're hoping that nothing untoward by that. I mean, nobody gets hurt, or is anyone of our fishermen are attacked by this so-called boats that are now hanging around in the reef there. If something happens, then we can invoke the Mutual Defense Treaty. I think that that's clear that what might happen.
Mm-hmm, sir. So we're talking about the Mutual Defense Treaty, which brings me to the VFA, sir, the Visiting Forces Agreement, which, as you know, has been abrogated, which is suspended under suspension right now, sir. So, with that said, you brought up the MDT, sir. Do you think this is the time that we start talking about the VFA?
Well, we're already actually meeting on a regular basis with
Mm-hmm.
our U.S. counterparts, our Department of Foreign Affairs, together with other members of those involved in the VFA. We're trashing out all the kinks, so to speak, and trying to see where we can agree on what would be best moving forward. So I'm not at liberty to disclose any of those right now, but I'm sure that we'll come out with something very strong that would be very good for both countries.
But there have been conversations between the Philippine government and the U.S. government specifically to talk about the VFA.
Yes, it's an ongoing thing, and every year we have a bilateral strategic dialogue. We had one over a month ago, which happens every year, and of course, one of the topics of discussion is the BFA, and so that's what our relationship is with the United States. We have a yearly dialogue that we discuss and thresh out any problems that we might have in relation to our mutual defense treaty or anything else outside of that one, including economic issues and whatever it is that we feel
Mhm.
is important for us to make our relationship with our countries clear and I would say in good steam.
Mhm, mhm. Should President Duterte just continue with the VFA, sir? Because I from the way we look at it, the president seems to be lukewarm, if not against bringing back the VFA. But with the recent events in the West Philippine Sea, is this the time for us to bring back VFA? What is stopping the Philippine government from reinstating it?
Well, I think right now it's been the abrogation has been suspended. In other words, it's in a
Mm-hmm.
situation where it's still being studied. So we just have to wait until something uh, clear comes out of these meetings. But at the end of the day, the president has the sole authority on whether to continue with the VFA or not, and I'm certain that he will do what is best for the country.
Mhm, mhm. What no last question, sir. What is the reaction of the US government when they hear the president of the Philippines saying you have if you want VFA, pay for it? What is the reaction from the US government when they hear the sentiments of the president being like that?
Well, my interpretation of that is simply you need to help us. The
Mm,
message is you need to help us modernize our armed forces, which is what the president's always said in the past. Uh, what is the point on having a mutual defense treaty if we cannot do our part? Mutual defense means that we are mutually be able to defend any kind of attack that happens because we are supposed to help them if they are attacked, and they're supposed to help us if we are attacked. But if we have nothing to use, if they are attacked, then it's just it's
mm,
solely their war, or which we hope will never happen, or vice versa. So I think that is what it is. It's really, in other words, um, the program of the government is to modernize our armed forces. And I think we've been successful in many ways. We've been able to bring up, especially our Air Force. Remember that joke that went around that we have an Air Force, it's all air, no force. Well, now I think we do have some force. We have 16 Black Hawk helicopters that we purchased from the United States on a special arrangement. And we have many other things that are going down in the pipeline. So all this is part of the whole program to modernize our armed forces, be
mm.
able to, for us to be able to defend ourselves when and if the time comes. At the same time, if and when we need to invoke the mutual defense treaty, we can mutually say that we can help each other in one way or the other.
Mhm. Final question, sir. What do you see of the Philippine and U.S. relationship moving forward?
I'm very confident that our relationship with the United States will remain very strong, no matter what happens. I'll tell you, I have been at this for many, many years, even during my private life. And I know that our relationship here is strong because of the fact that we have a very strong Filipino American community here. Many of our Philams serve in the US Navy, doctors, frontliners, ordinary workers, uh, extremely respected by the communities here. And the people to people is what makes it very strong. Every other Filipino has a relative or a friend who lives here, and vice versa. We have so many Americans who are living in the Philippines now, I'm told, close to 400,000 now, who actually have opted to retire in the Philippines. So all that relationship will continue, and I'm confident that in the long run, our relationship with the United States will remain as strong as ever, even as we try to reach out to many other countries like China and Russia so that we can have a more or less independent foreign policy that would be beneficial for our country. That's the most important thing
Mhm.
at the end of the day. What is best for our country is what we need to always be guided
Mhm.
down the road.
Sir, any message na lang, sir, to the Filipino American community over there in the United States during this pandemic, and maybe to their families as well here in the Philippines who might be worried about their situation over there?
Well, as I said, Neil, I think I'm very pleased that many of our Philippine American communities are now reaching out to the embassy here, asking how we can help
Mhm.
with the situation in the Philippines. And as I said, the best way is for them to write to their congressmen or their senators to help us get these vaccines as early as possible. We're not asking it for free. We bought them,
Mhm.
we paid for them, and we just want an early delivery because we need it now, not tomorrow.
Mhm.
That's and I'm very pleased that many of them, regardless of their political leanings, whether whatever political color, whatever their political beliefs are, they're all banding together and doing whatever they can to help our country.
Mhm. Thank you so much again, sir. Again, that is Philippine Ambassador to the United States, Jose Manuel Romualdez. Thank you for joining our program today, sir.
Thank you, Neil. Thank
Keep
you.
safe again,
Take
sir.
care.
And
You
we
too.
say
You stay safe.
goodbye. We say goodbye to you. And again, this is Neil Arwin Mercado, reporter for INQUIRER.net. Everyone, please stay safe.